Hi, today on the workbench we're going to take a quick look at a music and sound model MC902 stereo music intercom system. And this is actually, I think, a fairly rare model. So let's take a second and read from the actual sales catalog what Music and Sound had to say about it. Everything you want in a communication system plus a concert quality stereo system for total voice and music throughout your entire home. Combined with the optional CD player or cassette player, you have a total sound system. An independent intercom network assures crystal clear voice communications. The system's 60 watts, 30 watts per channel, drive up to 20 music speakers and up to 15 intercom speakers, plus 4 door speakers. This all makes the MC902 the ultimate combination for music and voice communication. Those are pretty lofty words for a model that they only made, as far as I can tell, for 6 years. Why did they probably only make it for 6 years? Well, like a lot of stereo music intercom systems, they're never a big seller. The additional cost for the additional stereo equipment and the additional stereo speakers that you might place in a house is somewhat prohibitive for a lot of people, considering that most of these types of systems in an average house or even in an above average house may only have 2 or 3 pairs of stereo speakers. You're certainly not going to put stereo speakers in a standard children's size bedroom. If you have bedrooms that are 12 by 14 going down the hallway, you're probably not going to spend the money to put stereo speakers in rooms like that. So you're paying a lot for this and some of the other stereo equipment, but not utilizing it all that much. First, we should thank Lou from Maryland. This is his MC902. He sent it to me for repair because basically it blew up. That's for a different video. Now that it's been repaired, we can go ahead and sort of take a quick look at the features and how a system like this gets put together, because it is somewhat more complex than your average mono intercom system. This particular unit was made in 1996. It shares a lot of the same design features and looks as the other MC units that were made during that time period. You have this sort of flat faceplate here in white, and then you have your control buttons here and some intercom buttons over here. You also have a door that pops open with more controls behind it. This is an early enough version of M&S intercoms that is before the days of menus and all those sort of things. You still basically have knobs and switches, which I think is the way to go. Right now it's powered up. It is 10:55 in the morning. Down here we have a power button which will turn the music source on. It's set to FM right now. You can switch the display from the radio station to the time. Can't play the radio too long, get one of those copyright strikes. You have music volume up and down here. This controls the music volume throughout the entire system. It's not for the master station. And as you can see here on the faceplate, you have slots in the faceplate, which are obviously slots for a speaker. And there is a speaker on the back of the unit, which I will show you. However, music does not play from here. The MC902 master station is essentially a radio receiver and also your audio input controls for external devices like their CD player, their cassette player, or some other external device that you might connect to it. But music doesn't play from this speaker. This is strictly for intercom. Down here, you can see this little pattern of holes that were made in the faceplate. And oddly enough, behind this on the other side is actually the microphone for the intercom use. The way this is designed is you would have, if you wanted to have music play from the master station controls, you would run wires and have 2 separately mounted speakers, either walls or ceiling speakers, one on the left and one over here on the right, either on the ceiling or on the wall. And you would control the volume of those speakers with this control behind the door. It says master speaker volume. The reason they did that was most likely because there isn't any way you're going to fit in all of those speakers in a unit this size, and they apparently didn't want to make it too big because big units don't sell either. So that's the way it was designed. You have your radio preset buttons here. You can program in 8 AM and 8 FM radio stations into the preset buttons. The presets are memory A and memory B for both AM and FM, and that's how you get 16 altogether. These are your tuning buttons here. Like most music and sound systems, at least all the ones I've ever seen, when you turn it on, if you push up, it will seek ahead and find the next strongest station and stop and stay there. It's not a scan tuner, it's a seek tuner. Here you have your button for memory A and B for your radio presets. You have your source select button, and if we turn this on again, we're on memory A FM, and now we're on memory A AM, auxiliary input, tape input, and back to FM stereo. Buttons to set the clock, and also it has an auto feature, which is a built-in timer. You can program it to turn the music on at a certain time every day and then off at a later time. When you want it to follow those programmed times, you use the auto button, and it says auto here on the display, and it will follow those times. When you want to sleep in on Saturday, turn auto off and it won't do that. Behind the door down here, you have your what I would call room control switches. This is designed, you have 11 switches plus the last one is patio, so it's 12 plus one for the master is 13 switches. Each switch has 3 positions: that station on, that station off, or that station in monitor, which is this one that's squealing right now. We'll get to that in a minute. So you can have up to 10 remotes plus the patio. Over here, you have the master speaker volume control. You have the intercom volume control. The intercom volume control is for the entire system. And then you have adjustments for both bass and treble. With a 2-channel 30-watt amplifier, which I'll show you in a second, you get fairly good sound out of it, especially if you have it hooked up to 8-inch speakers, which is what you would normally have, because Music and Sound did offer a wide variety of in-wall and ceiling-mounted speakers, and the majority of them are 8-inch speakers to give you better sound. Here are your intercom control buttons. You have room talk and room listen. So the way it works is when you want to call to someone in the house and there may be feedback, you push talk, speak into the microphone down here, and it comes out through all the remote stations. And then you can push listen, and the person responds and you'll be able to hear it. This system would be what I would refer to as a hands-free reply system, because the person that's replying to you in another location, they don't have to go right to the station. They don't have to operate the controls. You control it all from here or from another remote station. So essentially the person that initiates the call controls the call, and that's sort of what hands-free reply is all about. You have door, talk, and listen. That's a single button. When you push it, it goes into door talk mode. Big feedback there. And when you release it, it goes into listen mode and the visitor would simply reply. The door talk and listen times out once you stop pushing the button. It waits about 20 seconds and end calls or times out automatically. End call is a NuTone term, but that's what we're used to saying around here. Same idea. You also have a privacy button. Privacy buttons always create some amount of confusion. Since this system has what I would call hands-free reply, if you're at a remote station like this, you can push the room listen button and pick up the sounds from remote stations. Sometimes that doesn't work out very well in a house because perhaps you don't want the kids listening in on your conversation when you're trying to figure out what to buy them for Christmas or where to stash the Christmas presents in the house that year. So what you can do is you can push the privacy button on, which locks it down on the station that you're near, and that turns off the hands-free reply or the listen feature from that room. So that way the kids can't overhear and bust into the Christmas presents early on. One of the features of this model, which is common on all the MC models, is this door that covers up the control switches, has one of these push to latch, push to release sort of latch things up in here, and they seem to have a tendency to kind of wear out. Don't know why. It's a nice idea, and it's certainly maybe a little fancier than having magnets or some kind of catch that holds the door closed. However, like on this particular unit, it would latch, but the latch wouldn't go in all the way. So the door stood away from the faceplate just a little bit, and that was kind of bad. So I actually robbed a latch off another unit and put it in this one so the fella has a properly closing door. As for remote stations, there doesn't seem to have been a lot of choices uses for remote stations. There's this one, which is the most common one I think that people would buy. This is a stereo music intercom remote station. It does have a speaker cone, and pardon all the wires on the back, but this is hooked up as a test station now, and we need some way to hold the wires in place so they don't pull loose. You have a speaker cone here. This speaker cone is strictly for intercom use. Also, there is no microphone in the remote station, so the speaker cone doubles as a microphone. On the front of the unit, you have two separate volume controls. You have music volume and intercom volume, so you do have some adjustment on a room-by-room basis, and separately intercom and music. On this system, even though it's a stereo system, there is no balance control between left and right. It's preset in the design of the unit, and I believe that you're most likely getting equal volume out of both left and right all the time. You have your intercom buttons here, which are actually the same 4 buttons as on the master station. You have room, talk, and listen. You have 1 button for door, talk, and listen, and a privacy button just like on the master station. This is a model NSV94 remote station, and it actually has a 4-inch speaker in it. There also was an N94, which is basically an intercom only station with no music controls. I don't think they probably would have sold a lot of those, but perhaps if you were putting it in sort of a utility area or something like that where you didn't need the music, maybe that was the way to go. But I have a feeling that this is probably the most common one that you find. Also, I don't find any mention of a monaural speaker. It says in the guide that you can have a mix of stereo and mono music stations, but there doesn't seem to be any mono type station, so I'm unclear on how that would have been done. I don't see on the amplifier any kind of mono output, so again, unclear. I'm looking for a set of installation instructions for the MC902, which seem to be hard to come by, but I am trying to track one down, and if I get that, I will post those so people can download them and see how that all goes. There also was an option that you could buy a single volume control. It would be mounted on a single gang electrical plate and just wire up a pair of ceiling or wall speakers as a music only station, and that was probably a popular option in like living rooms and places where you didn't really need the intercom functions. Since we have our remote station in hand, let's take a quick look at the back, and you'll see a whole mess of wires. And mess of wires is a technical term that us installation guys like to use. A system like this requires a lot of wiring, a lot more wiring than your average mono music intercom system that Music and Sound may have made. The number of wires that you need are, you need a 7-conductor cable to connect between the terminal board behind the master station and the switchboard assembly, that's the green board down here on the back of the remote station. Then you also need a 3-conductor cable that's these 3 connections that runs to the separate amplifier for the system, which is mounted in the wall housing behind the master station. These are the right and left channel outputs of the amplifier, and they connect into the dual volume control down here. And so off the dual volume control, you have 2 wires to the left speaker, 2 wires to the right speaker. So altogether, you have 14 individual wires on the back of each station. And that's a lot of extra wires to run. Another reason why perhaps stereo systems are never as common as you would think, because additional costs for wire, but also a lot of additional costs for labor to put it all in, lots of extra wiring to do. And also, having done stereo systems myself, they require a lot more planning and layout than your average mono intercom system. You know, if you do a mono intercom system, it's 1 speaker in each bedroom on the wall above the light switch, and 1 or 2 on the patio, and 1 by the front door, and the master station goes in the kitchen, and you're pretty much all done. It's pretty easy. You know, average system, 5 or 6 inside remotes, a patio, and a front door. A system like this, because it's way over the top in features and cost and functionality, you could conceivably do a system, and I have done systems where you could max this out entirely, and it's a lot of work to do, and the layout has to be done correctly because speakers, especially ceiling speakers, have to be placed correctly so it sounds right in the room, and wall speakers and all those sort of things. So it's another reason why probably a lot of people who either installed these or sold these may have shied away from them, because it's a lot more of a commitment to do the installation. For the next part, we're going to go tripod free, because this is set up here. This is actually working. This is all hooked up as a system would be. And there's a lot back here that you can't see back here. And so we're going off the tripod and we're going to go handheld. I don't usually do handheld, but in this case it's the most practical choice. So back here on the workbench behind the master, that's the back of the MC902. Right here, this big black thing, if we go around this way it'll be easier to see, all of this is the separate stereo amplifier for all of the audio on the system. And this gets mounted in the wall, in the back of the wall housing behind the MC902 master station. This is powered by this pair of low voltage transformers. This is a music and sound model TE9, which is a special low voltage transformer for the 902, and it's essentially two individual transformers mounted on one mounting plate. Along with this being the stereo amplifier, it's also the primary power supply for the MC902. So there are three cables that come from the amplifier that plug into the back of the 902, and on the amplifier board right here, this green switch, this is the primary power switch for the entire system. So when a system like this was installed and everything was hooked up, this switch would have been engaged, and that turns the entire system on altogether. Also on the amplifier, there are three bulk terminal connect. There's one here for the right channel out, there's one here for the left channel out, and this one buried down here is the common center or common ground out for the stereo speakers. They use these big standoff connections because there would be one wire for every pair of stereo speakers made in each of these standoffs. So if your system has 6 pairs of stereo speakers, there would be 6 wires in this connection, 6 wires in this connection, and 6 wires in this connection. In addition to that, in the back of the wall housing would be this. This is the terminal board for the system. There are 3 multi-wired cables that come off the back of the master. That's one, this is the second one, this is the third one, and they plug into this board. And then all of the 7 conductor wires for the intercom functions from the remote speakers get terminated on all of these connections here, along with the door speaker, and there's an optional door release function and all of those sort of things. So you're going to end up with a really full wall housing with a lot of wires in it if you have a reasonably large system. In my example setup here, this was for testing for Lou's system. We have one 8-inch 45 ohm speaker cone there, and we have another one over here, and they're wired in as left and right. The real question now is, what does it sound like? And it's really hard to convey that in a YouTube video. And of course, we can't really play music for any long length of time because you get one of those copyright strike things. However, I can tell you just from this little minimal setup I have here, it actually sounds pretty good. It has a fair amount of bass. It has treble. The treble is a little soft and warm for me, but that's the way they designed it. And I would imagine that if you had a properly laid out system with thoughtfully placed speakers throughout a house, and you had halfway decent acoustics in the house, I think you could end up with a system that would sound above average for a system like this. So that's it. That's a brief look at a Music and Sound MC902 stereo music intercom system. I hope you found this interesting, and maybe for someone it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube because that helps us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications. And every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.